we are, all of us, whether we are Christians or Jews or Muslims or Hindus or Sikhs or we belong to any religion, our first connection with each other is on the basis of humanity. Because we are first human beings, and after that we could be Muslims or Christians or follow any religion. And this is such a wide base that if we connect ourselves with our brethren, with the rest of mankind, we will come to realize that this is on the basis of those universal human values that all of us have in common. So truth, justice, kindness, compassion, this is ingrained in all of us as human beings. So I think one thing that we have to realize as Muslims is that we need to connect with society first on the basis of humanity, first on the basis of being human beings. So being kind to one another, being considerate to one another, feeling for one another, regardless of religion, regardless of race, regardless of any ethnicity that you follow, is essential. So if there are, for example, earthquakes going on in any part of the world, or we know that in California we have this serious fire issue which erupts every year, and we have other calamities in different parts of the world. So because of the fact that we are part of this global family, our feelings towards people who are even distant from our own land should be as if they are our own part. And we have to care about them, we have to think about them, do what best we can do, and if nothing else, then at least we can pray for each other. We can have this tremendous, I would say, blessing of God to feel for the other person who might not be close to us in proximity, in the physical way. He might be thousands of miles away. But the fact that we are concerned about that person, we are thinking about the well-being of that person, is something that we must always realize. So I think as Muslims and as followers of any other religion, our first duty is to connect to one another on that human plane. And if we do so, we find commonality in a lot of areas. So, for example, the Quran says that the religion which was given to Muhammad was the same as was given to Noah and to Abraham and to Moses and to Jesus. And all of them called people towards Islam. And the basic tenets of all previous religions, I'm referring to divine religions, were the same. So therefore, not only our innate guidance, which is found in ourselves, but also the revealed guidance, at least of the Abrahamic religions, is so close to one another that we need to sit down, we need to have, for example, common scripture study sessions in which we can understand and exchange views on the Bible. Remember, the Quran tells us that we have to believe in all the books of God, in all the prophets of God. So this doesn't mean that we have to blindly follow a prophet or blindly follow a book of God. We cannot believe in a book of God unless we read that book of God. So therefore, just as we read the Quran, we should read the Bible, we should read the Torah, for example, and obviously in the light of the Quran. And this would also be very beneficial for people in this way. They would come close to each other, they would have sitting with each other and learn to disagree. You have disagreements with your own wife, you have disagreements with your own children, so why can't you have disagreements with people of other faith? Because you see, every person who thinks can think differently. So if in your house you have people who think differently, you can have people who think differently in the world around you. So tolerance, accommodation, and being a well-wisher, as the Prophet Muhammad has reported to have said, ad-deen an-nasiha, that religion is to be a well-wisher of the other person. And that well-wishing is only augmented when we find ourselves connected to the rest of mankind in a humane way, in a human way. And then after that we can talk about religion and talk about other things. So this is the first lesson I think that we need to remind ourselves, that we are all human beings, and on the human plane we must connect to each other first before we talk about religion or other things that may divide us. The second important, I would say, forgotten lesson, or something that we have tend to forgot, is we might have ignored, I would say, is that as people who are living in this world, all of us must follow our own conscience. And the Quran tells us that our own conscience is something which tells what between right and wrong. We don't need to go to any person to find what right and wrong are. The Quran tells us, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. The right and wrong is ingrained in us. We know what right and what wrong is. And this right and wrong is something that our own human soul, our own conscience can tell us. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said, when someone asked him that what is a sin? He said, "Ma haka fi sadrika," something which causes something in your own heart. You feel discomfort in your own heart. Ma haka fi sadrika wa karihta an yuttala alayhi nas, and you are uncomfortable in disclosing that to other people. So if that is the case, remember you're doing something wrong. So I think to be people of our own conscience, to be a person who follows our own conscience, to be a person who, even if that following of the conscience puts one in a position of bother. For example, if you uphold the truth and if you are following the truth, it might be against your own interest. It might be against the interest of your own father and mother, of your parents, of your brethren. And look what the Quran tells us. It says that you have to bear witness to the truth, وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ, even if it goes against you, even if it goes against your parents, even if it goes against the society that you live in. So you cannot compromise on the truth. You cannot compromise on your conscience, because conscience and the truth is like God's representative on this earth. When you follow your conscience, when you follow the truth, it is like following God. And that is without any compromise. So truth and justice is something that Muslims are expected to adhere to in all circumstances. And we need to re-evaluate ourselves as a result. And do we do so every day? So every day there are so many instances in which we have to speak the truth or give a statement or say something, and we must realize that whether what we say is according to the truth or is it something that I am overstating or maybe understating. So this is an exercise that we have to do, and the standard of justice is so stringent in the Quran. It tells us that not only you have to be just, and even if you bear any loss, the Quran tells us that you have to be just to your enemies as well. It says, "La yajrimannakum shana'anu qawmin ala alla ta'dilu, i'dilu huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa." That enmity or animosity of a nation should not inspire you or arouse you to be unjust to them. I'dilu, you have to be just to them. Here, aqrabu lit-taqwa, because it's closer to piety. So look at the standard which the Quran has set, that not only justice is to be done at the individual level, but also at the collective level. Even if there are people who are unjust to you, you have to be just to them. So this is another important lesson that we need to understand, that following our conscience, following our own inner light, which we could call the divine spark, which all of us have in ourselves, which is basically God's gift to us, is something that we must always need to follow. The third important lesson that I'd like to point out here is that if we want to become good human beings, if you want to become people who are better than before, then there is a method that we must adopt. And no one is going to set ourselves right. It is we ourselves who have to take charge of our own lives. And the best way to improve ourselves as persons, as people, to my mind, is self-accountability. So if you want to become a good person, hold yourself accountable as much as you can. Stop judging people. Start judging your own self. Because for the people, you don't know what their data is. You don't know the intentions. You don't know how they're thinking. You just know a partial reflection of what the other person is. But as for your own self is concerned, you know very well who you are. So stop judging other people. Start judging your own self. And at the same time, holding yourself accountable in a very stringent way, in a very strict way. And there are certain things that could help in this way. Thus, for example, I would say that if you are to hold yourself accountable, then a 3 or 4 point strategy could be helpful. You must fix a time of day, every day, in which you review your day's proceedings. And the best part, or the best time, I think you would agree, is the time when you go to bed at night. We review our day and find out how we fared in the day, what we did in the day, whether it was right or wrong, and make a fresh commitment every day that if something I did wrong today, I'm not going to repeat it tomorrow. Even if I do repeat it tomorrow, even then we make the same commitment every day, because it is this commitment which helps us one day to actually overpower and overcome our blemishes. So the first point I would say to self-accountability is to fix a time of accountability every day and review ourselves in the light of what happened on that day. The second suggestion that I'd like to give regarding this self-accountability point is that remember, this is not going to happen immediately. If you want to improve, it's not like a push button process. It's not like you push a button and you reform yourself. It will take a lot of time. And one of the biggest weapons of Satan is that he makes you a disappointed person. He makes you lose hope in your own self. And in Arabic, Satan is called Iblis. So Iblis, the name in Arabic, means someone who has lost hope in God's mercy. So what Iblis does is, he makes you lose hope in your own self. And he tells you that yes, you make a commitment every day of not doing such and such a bad thing, and you end up doing it again the next day. So what he does is he makes you frustrated, disappointed in your own self. He kills your self-belief. So it is here that we need to stand up. And it's even if we are doing the same blemish or a wrong thing every day, even then we must make the same commitment, sleeping at night, that inshallah next day I'm going to not do it. But as I said, we must not lose hope, we must not lose that self-belief in us, because if we continue with this passion and power, one day inshallah we'll be able to overcome that. The third important point regarding this self-accountability is that it's a continuous process. It's not going to end in a couple of days. It's not that you'll achieve something immediately. I always compare this to, for example, if we have a house, the dust which we need to clean, it settles in the house almost every second or third day. So you need to clean that room or your house. You need to vacuum your house every fourth or fifth day so that the dust, whatever has gathered there, is just brushed off. So you see, our heart is also like a room. The dust of sins, it gathers in our heart. And we need a scrub, we need a vacuum to clean our hearts as well. So just as you clean your house, and you never say that my house is now clean forever, but you do it continuously as long as you're living. So in a very similar way, we have to enter this process of self-accountability every single day and never think that this is going to end. And I think it's going to end with our last breath, because every time that we move forward in life, we are faced with a lot of challenges, we are faced with a lot of lures from Satan, and we have to continuously do this dusting process in our heart. And last but not the least, self-accountability also helps. It also helps if you try regular feedbacks from your colleagues, from your spouse, from your maybe children, from your siblings. Ask them, how have I behaved in the last 1 month? Tell me what are the wrongs that I have done. Because you see, at times you don't realize. You're doing something in a routine way without realizing that you were perhaps being angry to someone, maybe you were not good to someone, but you don't realize that. So this also helps that you seek this help from your own brethren and tell and ask them that please tell me that I'd like your feedback on my character, on my conduct. It's going to help me in moving forward. So, as I said, this third point of self-accountability. The first thing that I mentioned was that we have to have that religion, which is humanity, at the forefront. The second point that I mentioned was that our conscience has to be our guide. The third point that I'm now discussing is of self-accountability. And this self-accountability itself, I said, is something that we can gauge if we try to organize our lives in the manner that we hold ourselves accountable every day, never get frustrated, if we don't reform ourselves immediately, do it constantly, and finally seek feedback from our close ones, because they're not sincere well-wishers, they're not going to lie, and it might help you a lot in this case. The fourth lesson that the Quran teaches us is what I call gratitude therapy. So you see, all of us, we pass through different sorrows and pains. We have so much going on every day that we tend to be depressed, we tend to be disappointed, we get frustrated, we have lows in our lives, and we feel as if we have been crammed with so many trials and miseries. But I think the way out to this is to keep counting our blessings. Because as the Quran says, in ta'uddu ni'matullahi la tuhsuha, keep counting your blessings, you'll not be able to count them because there's so many. And if you start looking towards your blessings, you'll have a positive attitude. Instead of thinking what you don't have, you'll start to think what I have. Look at our eyes, look at our ears, look at the normal body that we have, and look at people who are blind, who are deaf, who are dumb, who have other handicaps. But because of the fact that we take these things for granted, we have eyes ever since we were born, and we never think that had we not had eyes, how would we have spent our lives? And so I do suggest my colleagues and my students, whenever I talk about the subject, that there is this blind drill that we need to do. And that is, close your eyes and start doing whatever you were doing before. For example, writing or eating or changing your clothes or going to the next room while your eyes are closed. And in 1 or 2 minutes, you'll realize how big a blessing your eyes are. So in order to realize this blessing, you deprive yourself of this for a few moments. Deprive yourself of eyesight. And then you'll realize how big a gift eyesight is. So you see, these blessings of the Almighty are so many that you just feel drenched. That it's like a rain falling down from the sky and engulfing you from all sides. So if you are able to express this gratitude before God, you will find that you have done away with the miseries and the trials you are facing. Why? Because the blessings are way more than the trials you will be facing. So I think to have a normal body, to be able to eat every day, at least 2 meals, to have a shelter, to have clothes, to be able to go to a hospital when you are sick, to have good education, to have a reasonable job. If you are a person who has these, count yourself to be extremely lucky. Because there are people who are living under the poverty line, who don't know that if they eat today, when will be the next meal, whether they'll have a meal tomorrow or not. They don't have facilities to go to hospitals. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about the United States, where you have an insurance program maybe, but I'm talking about the world at large. Today we know that 30% of the world is living below the poverty line. They have to walk for miles at times to have clean water. There's so much misery going on in Syria, in Yemen, in some of the other areas that you can read in the newspapers and find how people are suffering and yet still smiling. So you see, we have to understand that as far as countering these difficulties is concerned, the best way out is to always thank God for what we have than to grumble about what we don't have. Because gratitude is something which connects you to God immediately. It makes you a person who is always positive. It makes you a person who's always thinking of what he has. It makes you a person who always wants to share his blessings with other people, because you think that this gratitude is something which is not to be just said by the tongue. You have to also do something. So if you have something to spare, if you have something that you can share with other people, we must do so. And this is what now brings me to the next point, and that is to be charitable in life. And to be charitable in life is not just through money, it is a behavior that we all of us must have. That is to be generous to each other, to be kind to each other, to be compassionate to each other, to look and help other people. And here I would also like to point out that people who are in need, people who are in misery, at times they don't have the courage, and they have this self-esteem, and they would not come and ask for their needs. They would not come and ask for their needs. The Quran says, "La yas'aluna nasa ilhafa." They don't come and grapple you and say, "Well, I need something." They are people who are white-collar people who just might hold their own needs back to themselves, who might sacrifice for their children, who might hold back on their needs. They might sleep at night without food, but they won't come and ask you for help. So it is here that we are much more responsible, that we need to find out people who are in need, yet they would not ask you. So you see, there are so many people who would ask you, and you would know and you can find and you can evaluate them and maybe give them, but there is a big chunk of society who has this self-esteem, who has this ego, which is a good thing, in which they would think that, well, asking from other people is something that I cannot do. So I think it is our duty first to reach out to these people. To reach out to these people is the effort that we can do. And at times, if we have the eyes and the ears, we find such people right below our nose. Maybe in our family, maybe amongst our friends. They might look very well dressed. They might look outwardly they look very satisfied. But if you are a little more careful, if you observe them, you find out that this person is outwardly looking very satisfied and is maybe well settled, but maybe he doesn't have the fees to give for his child's school tuition, or maybe he's not wealthy enough to have a transport means. Maybe he's not in a position to go to a good doctor for his own, to seek help from a doctor. So you see, to seek other people in a way that you are going to share your blessings, and at the same time being charitable. Charitable is something that, as I said, it's not just through money, it could be from your behavior as well. For example, if someone comes to you and you are just able to listen to that person's problems, and maybe you can offer nothing in return except a smile or except a prayer for that person. You just cannot imagine how it could light up the person, how it can be comforting for that person. So to provide comfort to our people, to be able to be like a gust of breeze for them, to be a soothing breeze for them, by merely listening to their problems, by merely talking to them. And at times, if you are not in a position to help, remember, all of us have friends. All of us have resources. Pick up the phone, pick up a WhatsApp message, send a WhatsApp message maybe to someone else. If you're not in a position to help monetarily, maybe someone else that you know is able to do so. So it's like thinking of other people, putting other people before ourselves, being selfless, being people who are able to listen to other people, who are able to give to other people, who keep other people before our own needs. And as far as being charitable is concerned, there are a few pitfalls as well that we must need to perhaps pay attention to. And that is that whenever we are giving someone some charity maybe, or helping him in some way, maybe giving our time, we must not brag, we must not boast, we must not come out and say to people that, well, today I spent so much for someone, or this is how I did something good. So you see, showing off your charitable behavior, showing off your generosity kills the very reason or the objective for which you have to be charitable. So you see, tazkiyah, which is being pure in your soul, to be a purified person, which the Quran tells us is the sole objective of religion. If you want to find that purified soul, that spiritual enhancement in your own self, if you do these good deeds and hide those good deeds, the more you do, the more you hide them, the more spiritually enhancing will they be. Of course, there are instances in which you might like to share some of your good deeds, for example, before your children, to encourage them. So that is an exception. But in general, if your intention is to do a good deed and then start talking about it and giving an advertisement about it, that's going to kill the very objective of doing a good deed. And that is tazkiyah, being closer to God. Similarly, never express your favor to a person to whom you have done a good deed. The Quran says, "La tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal adha." And do not convert your charity into something which is absolutely flawed by reminding the other person that, look how charitable I was to you. So this again is something which kills the very objective of charity. And as it is, it's very difficult for a person to accept charity, and it is even more difficult and very humiliating for that person when you keep reminding that person, look what I did for you, look what I did for you. Remember, we did that for God, not for that person. So it is not befitting that we keep reminding that person what we did for that person. Similarly, another important thing regarding charity is that never shy away, even if we have very little to give. At times we make huge plans. Well, I'll give if I have $100 maybe, or $200, or if I have so and such an amount. No, whatever you have in your pocket, it could be 10 cents, it could be a dime, it could be any small amount. If you can spare that small amount, don't shy away, because your test before God is what you can spare, not that how much you can spare, whatever you can spare. So I think being charitable in this way is something at times we do shy away when we think that we are not able to do enough. Remember, deciding what is enough and what is not enough rests with God. We have to do our part. We have to share our part. And that is how we have to behave. And then another thing which is important regarding charity is that we have to start, as they say, charity begins at home. Start with the closest of your people, your friends, your relatives, people who are right close to you. Because what happens is that at times we are, doing all sorts of good deeds and going out in the society without realizing that right in my own home, maybe right next to my home, my neighbor, or someone who's living very close by, or is a friend, he or she might be in need, and look at me, I'm going to taking all sorts of pains and going, not that I'm saying that you should not go there, but start with the closest. So, al-aqrab fal-aqrab, as you say, that you start with the closest and then you go to the next person in line. And finally, the Quran also tells us about charity, that the highest possible form of charity, as the Quran says, is يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. That believers are those who, in spite of being in need, they give other people preference. For example, I don't have anything to spare, and here someone comes along and he or she would need something, maybe a bread or maybe some medicine or maybe some money, and I have just enough money for my own self. But the Quran says that the highest form of charity is that you give away what you have for your own self to that person. And I can tell you, my dear listeners and participants here, that I've heard so many elders say that when you do so, you experience God. How? Because when you give your own share to other people, you don't imagine that maybe in the next couple of days how God rewards you. And I've seen so many stories in which people have given away their own share, which they needed at most. And out of nowhere, min haythu la yahtasib, as the Quran says, وَيَرْزُقْهُ min haythu la yahtasib. He gave you that money back, not only that money back, but thousands of times more, manyfold, because you did not withhold what you had from someone who was also in need. So this is the highest form of charity. So one charity is that what you can spare for other people. Of course, that's a good thing. But another charity, which is a very high form of charity, is to be charitable even if you are not able to spare something. So you give what you have for your own self. And then the Quran also tells us another thing, that don't give charity regarding wealth which is filthy. And give what is best to you. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. So you cannot reach the level of piety and loyalty to God unless you spend something which is the most dear to you, which is the closest to you. So I always think that let us someday, instead of giving things that we can spare or maybe something which are old, which we don't use, why not buy something new and give that new thing or that new commodity away in charity? Because at times there are things that you love a lot, you like a lot. So one of the ways to come closer to God is to think that, well, what is the thing that I like the most? It could be a particular thing, a particular asset, it could be a particular maybe a form of dress, it could be a gadget that you have that you really like. So if you want to become really close to God, try and test this, that you give that away to someone who also needs it. And you'll find that there is a certain amount of spiritual fulfillment that comes to you. And you really realize that I have done someone, I've made someone's day, I have been able to contribute to someone. And remember, the best happiness that you can have is the happiness that you gain when you make other people happy. If you want to be happy, it's not that being happy is a difficult thing. You have the rewards to happiness. Make other people happy, and by simply seeing other people happy because you made them happy, will bring tremendous amount of happiness to you. So happiness radiates happiness. So if you want to be a happy individual, always make other people happy. Always be a charitable person. Always think of other people before you think of your own selves.